Chapter 11 of The Meanest Doll in the World. The Return. For several more hours, Annabelle, Tiffany, and Callie's doll sat quietly in BJ's room. They saw no sign of Mean Mimi and no sign of Techno Man. Pretty soon we'll have to go back to Callie's room, said Melody, standing and stretching. Mimi is going to be madder than a hornet. Oh, I like that comparison. But once Callie comes home, she won't be able to do anything to us. So she behaves herself when Callie's around, asked Annabelle. Well, mostly, said Annabelle. Felt fear ripping through her. How much more damage can Mimi cause? What about Techno Man? Asked Tiffany. Where do you think he is? I'm not sure, replied Melody. This makes me nervous. Techno Man was humiliated. He was embarrassed. So I guess he's off sulking. He's never done that before. I hope he has the sense to return before BJ and Callie do. Whose rooms does he belong in? Annabelle wanted to know. BJ's. See that bucket in the corner? That's where the action figures are kept. Although, I wonder if Techno Man will stay there now since he really isn't an action figure at all. So the dolls sat and talked until finally Waterfall said, I think we should go. She looked at Annabelle and Tiffany. We hate to leave you, but we want to be ready when Callie comes home. That's okay. We should get back in the backpack anyway, replied Tiffany. Beth let out a sigh. Back to Mimi Land. The dolls stood up. They hugged each other and said goodbye. When we get home, Annabelle said, we're going to tell our parents about Mimi. She really is a menace. Maybe they'll have some ideas of what to do about her. It must be nice to have grown-up dolls around, said Penny. It is, Annabelle replied, mostly. The Troll Twins and the PJ Party Pals, the Cutouts and the Sandra doll, and Sleeping Billy left the room. Okay, said Tiffany, into the backpack. Into the backpack, said Annabelle. She and Tiffany walked through the toys, the papers on the floor, which Annabelle prayed were now in exactly the same spots they were on Friday when BJ left them. Then they stood before the backpack and looked at it. Like Kate's, there was one large zipper main compartment and several other smaller compartments on the side. Where should we hide? Asked Tiffany. The big compartment, said Annabelle. We'll stay at the bottom like we did when we were in Kate's. And so Annabelle and Tiffany spent a long night at the bottom of BJ's backpack. They crawled under some papers and an old woolen glove, and then they listened. They listened to the sound of BJ's family returning, and here's a great picture of the dolls saying goodbye. You can see Sleeping Billy, and you can see the Sandra doll's feet. They listened to voices calling, and they thought they knew whose BJ's voice was, and whose was Callie's, and whose were their parents. They listened especially hard for any signs of the humans' thoughts, though things were not quite right, but they didn't hear anything very disturbing. Later, much later, they listened to nighttime sounds, and they heard many that were familiar to them. The hum of the refrigerator, clocks ticking, floors creaking. They heard scrambling, the sound too, and thought maybe BJ's house had mice, which upset Annabelle, but the scrabbling stopped, and no mice jumped into the backpack. So Annabelle stopped worrying and thought instead about her wonderful homecoming she would soon have. By the morning, a new set of worries occupied her mind. What if BJ didn't take his backpack to school? Would she and Tiffany have time to climb out of the backpack and find something else to hide in? What if BJ didn't take his backpack, but he went searching for his glove and found Annabelle and Tiffany at the bottom? What if the girls got to school safely, but Kate hadn't brought her backpack? What if they made it all the way back to the Palmer's house to discover that they had been noted and that Kate and Nora had been searching for them, and now the humans were suspicious? But Annabelle's worries were for nothing. BJ did pick up the backpack and took it to school. During a quiet moment that morning, the girls managed to slip out, drop to the floor, find Kate's backpack, which this time they made certain was Kate's. They climbed into it, and at the end of the day, the bell rang, and they heard Annabelle and Kate's voice, and Annabelle heard Kate's voice as she hoisted the backpack from its shelf and slid her arms in through the straps. 20 minutes later, Annabelle and Tiffany were back at the Palmer's house on Weatherby Lane. Kate set the backpack on the kitchen floor while she ate a snack with Nora, Grandma, and Grandma Catherine. Then she carried her backpack upstairs to her room and dropped it on her bed. A few minutes later, Annabelle heard footsteps leave the room. Then Kate calling, Grandma Catherine, Can I go over Ayana's house? When the dolls heard only silence for the next few minutes, they could no longer wait. Now, whispered Tiffany. Now, Annabelle could tell that Tiffany was grinning. You should probably come to my house, said Annabelle as she stood up. You shouldn't risk being seen in the Palmer's hallway. It's dangerous enough to run across Kate's room at this time of day. That's okay. I'll go back to my house tonight. So the dolls scrambled out of the backpack and crawled down Kate's bedspread to the floor. Then they dashed across the room to the step stool. They stood at the bottom of it and yelled, Hello, is anyone home? And for a moment, they heard nothing. Then a voice replied, Annabelle, Tiffany, is that you? Yes, it's us. It's really us, Annabelle cried softly. Cautiously, Mama and Papa appeared at the front of the dollhouse. Mama glanced around Kate's room to make sure that no humans were in sight. To Annabelle's surprise, Mom Funcraft appeared next to Papa. So Nora's been playing in Kate's room again, thought Annabelle. Oh dear, said Mama, looking faint. We're afraid we might never see you again. Are you all right? Are you really all right? We're fine, replied Annabelle. Hi, honey, Mom Funcraft called. Did you have fun? Two different parents with two different perspectives, right? Mom Funcraft's like, did you have fun? And Miss Mama Doll is just like Annabelle, worried that things would happen. My land, exclaimed Nanny, peering over Mama's shoulder. What? Where were you? There you are, said Auntie Sarah. And here's a picture of the girls standing at the foot, trying to get a good thing here, and looking up. Good heavens, come on up here. So Annabelle and Tiffany scrambled up the steps of the dollhouse as fast as they were able. A few minutes later, Annabelle felt herself in a flurry of hugs wrapped in her mom's arms, and then her father's, and then Auntie Sarah's and Uncle Doll's, then Nanny's, and then Mom Funcraft, then Bobby's, and finally Baby Betsy's. As she reached out from the spot on her floor, Where on earth have you been? Asked Mama. Why, they've been at school, I presume, said Auntie Sarah. Isn't that right, girls? Yes, said Annabelle, and my, what an adventure, said Mom Funcraft. But why didn't you come back on? And here's a picture of all of them and they're reuniting and all the hugs going around. Why didn't you come back on Thursday? Asked Papa. Kate brought her backpack home. We saw her. Annabelle heard a hint of annoyance in his voice. Tiffany must have heard it too because she said, well, we tried to come home. Then we really did, but we got out of Kate's backpack in school and we couldn't return in time. You got out of the backpack, said Mama. Why? And Uncle Doll said, you ran around a big place like school in front of all of those humans? Annabelle elbowed Tiffany, realizing they should have spent their hours stuck in the backpack, discussing what they were going to tell their parents. Tiffany stopped speaking. But Auntie Sarah said, oh, at school, just to think about it, to be in a school. Oh, my. Oh, imagine if we were in school right now. It would be so much fun if we were back in school. Think of all the great things we were doing and learning. Sarah said, Uncle Doll, don't encourage them. For heaven's sake, I'm sure they were careful. What a wonderful opportunity. An exploration of some magnitude, I really might add. I'll say, agreed Mom Funcraft. We were careful, said Annabelle. Very careful, added Tiffany. Auntie Sarah was rubbing her hands together. All right, so you were stuck in school on Thursday. Then what happened? What about Friday? You're really not going to believe it, said Tiffany. What? Cried Auntie Sarah. Annabelle had been trying to figure out just what to say and what not to say, but now she had a feeling that with Auntie Sarah and Mom Funcraft on their side, she and Tiffany weren't really going to be in much trouble. Okay, well, on Friday, we waited for just the right moment to return to Kate's backpack. Together, Tiffany and Annabelle began their story of their adventure. They told of accidentally climbing out of BJ's backpack, of peering out of the pack later and realizing they were in the wrong house. They told about their new friends, about Mimi, and the terrible things that she did. They took turns. Tiffany would speak until she had something left out, and then Annabelle would jump in. Annabelle would speak until she left something out, and then Tiffany would jump in. When they were finished with their story, the other dolls were speechless. They looked both astonished and frightened. Mama and Papa clutched each other, and Uncle Doll fanned himself with his handkerchief. Oh, my life, I've been afraid of something like this. Imagine such a menace in nearby, said Nanny. Mama, said Annabelle. Papa, do you think there's any way we can help Melody and Waterfall and the other dolls at BJ's house? They're in trouble. Huge trouble, added Tiffany. And so are we. So are the dolls everywhere, said Annabelle. The grown-ups looked at one another. Annabelle, Mama said, but she was interrupted from a noise across the room. All the dolls jumped up. Places, places, everyone hissed. Annabelle, Tiffany, hide. Oh, there's no need of that, a voice called. It's just me. As Annabelle and Tiffany watched, one small tiny hand came out of the compartment of the backpack, which was opened, and a doll dressed in lavender climbed out, scurried down the bed, and began to crumb across the floor toward the dollhouse. It was. There's that hand coming out of the backpack. And it was no other than Mean Mimi. So she left BJ's house. And now she's at the Palmer's house. Is your heart beating fast? Can you imagine? Oh my gosh. Annabelle and Tiffany, you didn't get rid of her. Now she's at their house. What is going to happen? Stay tuned for Chapter 12.